This month, Tumble Track is having a sale. So many sales. 10% off preschool equipment, 10% off Spieth equipment, like the Spieth beams, 5% off carpet bonded foam, which you know always has to be replaced because people are poking holes in it. And some of the air products are on sale in their blowout sale. Visit Tumble Track at TUMBLTRAK tumbletrack.com. Train smart. This show is PG-13, so you may hear a naughty word or two. But we're trying to keep it clean because today we're going to talk about a member of the Magnificent Seven, the first Black gymnast ever in artistic gymnastics to win an Olympic event medal, 3-time Olympian, superstar of knowing her own worth, the pride of Maryland, Dominique Dawes. Today is September 30th. And welcome to the #1 gymnastics podcast in the galaxy. I'm Jessica, and I'm here with Spencer from the Balance Beam Situation. This episode is a special commission for Andrea. Andrea, you're the head coach and owner of Grand Rapids Gymnastics Academy in Grand Rapids, Minnesota, way up in the north. Yes, this is for you. This episode is from your Minnesota gymnastics family and your soul sister, Erin. She said,
Andrea is the rare breed of coach who has always prioritized her athletes' mental, physical, and emotional health above all else, and has helped develop some very talented gymnasts who are highly competitive nationally. Andrea is adored and cherished by her gym family, all the more so because Grand Rapids is in northern Minnesota, where few other programs exist.
Ah, the cold winds of northern Minnesota. Now we will warm you with the tale of Dominique Dawes' greatness. Well, first, I want to ask you, before we get to the gymnastics and the specifics, what
before we get to Spencer's part,
what are your memories, or what were your memories of Dawes before doing a deep dive for this episode? Like, how did you remember her, and did your remembrance of her change at all?
How I remember her is she was one of my favorites, but also during the 1996 Olympics, my best friend Harper from elementary school was obsessed with Dominique Dawes. She was like, Dominique Dawes is the best one. We're only talking about Dominique Dawes. We're not talking about Amy Chow. And I was like, I would like to talk about Amy Chow. And she was like, no, Dominique Dawes is the best. So you have those associations, I think, from the early Olympics, like when you're in elementary school, where it's like, that's the first thing I think of when I think about Dominique Dawes, is how much my best friend was obsessed with her. And I think that's so many people's impression of Dominique Dawes is just like, when I was little, I was obsessed with this woman. I just loved watching her. I was so excited to watch her. And that's the really interesting thing about memories of Dominique Dawes, especially because she had longevity, 3 different Olympics, a long elite career, took breaks, did pro gymnastics and all of that. And there's such an evolution in her gymnastics and her gymnastic style, from being the upstart daredevil doing the cool things in 1992 to 2000 and making the team as the veteran. So that's really interesting as well, because it kind of, your impression of Dominique Dawes depends on what was the defining time period in her career that you got to know her, because she's such a different gymnast in 1982 versus 2000.
Yes. When I was first, there's 2 things that I remembered, or that stuck out to me. When I started this episode, and then they very much changed my opinions after going back and re-watching everything and re-looking at and reading about her. And, part of it was I remember going to some tour, I think, or some meet where I just watched her warm up, and I swear in my mind, she did, her warm up was just, she went to bars.
She did a triple in my mind. It was perfect.
She just did, and she had this amazing huge Hindorf, a free hip to Cacho. But I just remember her going to bars and just by herself, because most people did this with a spotter to get their position perfect. Just doing 20 free hip handstands to hold the handstand perfect position, drop into it again. Not in a row. She didn't stop, but it was free hip, perfect position handstand, free hip, all controlled, all her deciding when she was going to drop for her free hip again. And they were just perfect. She didn't need anybody there. She didn't spot. She was just all right, well, my basics are perfect, and this is why I can do what I do. And I, coaching at the time and trying to get the idea of free hips across. And I was like, God, how can I just show that?
Just look at Hills. The era, the Hills Hindorf. had a long run.
Yeah, so powerful. Do they not teach back hip circles? You just teach drop and then go straight into the air, just shoot into the air. Anyway, I just remember being so impressed by her basics. And then the other thing is I remembered this fluff piece where in my memory, the whole like 15 minutes of the intro of this was just about how she'd had a total breakdown and couldn't do anything in practice or training and just cried the entire time. And she was just a total mess. And Kelly Hill was like, I don't know what's wrong with her. I can't get through to her. I don't know what to do. And then I watched it again and it's like 1 minute long. There's maybe like 2 seconds of them showing her crying in practice and then she's fine. And I was like, this was a big deal. This is like nothing, you know?
It made a big impression.
Yeah, but it made like a huge impression, or the way they presented it at the time. It's so interesting to read.
It's your origin story. They were over focusing on a gymnast crying instead of like, which is a totally normal thing, instead of her gymnastics.
Right. So yeah, this was fun to go back and.
Yeah, it was really fun. A really fun watch, just back to back, like 92, 93, 94, 96, 2000, and just watch those routines back to back and be like, whoa. The code changed a lot. Your gymnastics changed a lot.
One of all, you should probably tell the facts right here because I will mess them up.
Right.
So
Jessica has some Dominique Dawes greatness facts, but I have to read them. Okay. Dominique Dawes, one of only 4 American gymnasts ever to go to 3 Olympics, 4 Olympic medals, 4 world championship medals, the first American gymnast to win a team medal at 3 different Olympics. That was only until like a couple minutes ago. And then Simone was like, also me. In 1992, with Betty Okino, she became the first Black gymnast to win an Olympic medal, which is team bronze in 1992. She's the first Black gymnast to win an individual Olympic event medal, which was the bronze on floor in Atlanta in 1996. The first Black gymnast to win an Olympic gold medal in 1996. Took 68 years for that to happen. She had to compete at Worlds the same year, by the way, because the Worlds and Olympics, they have them in the same year. Just an idea. She's also the partial owner / limited partner of an NFL team. This is how you know I didn't write this list.
This is
because
how
the NFL team information is included in there.
She is like a limited partner owner of the Atlanta Falcons. So I had no idea. Like, I think she's been very smart with her money over the years, which is another like very impressive thing about her. One of the few gymnasts who's appeared on Broadway in the revival of Grease, the musical. She played Patty Simcox. Do you remember Patty Simcox?
I don't know. I don't differentiate the characters.
Basically, all gymnasts, there has to be the gymnast that plays like the bitchy cheerleader, except Patty Simcox was interesting because she was like really nice, but also super judgy, but also innocent and didn't understand any of the jokes that the like, you know, bad people wearing leather jackets were telling. I do think that Lori Hernandez will be the next Broadway gymnast. The next gymnast on Broadway. Yeah, Olympic gold medalist to be on Broadway. Let me say. Dawes said about her Broadway experience that she loved doing the show. She loved her castmates. She loved the experience, but that she was a very, very sheltered and that New York City was not the city.
Sheltered? What?
We've never.
I don't think we've ever heard that story before.
It is so interesting hearing the difference between her going to live in New York City, you know, to like live their dream and try to make it in like acting and, you know, and she sings. I mean, it was a musical. Like she sings in this too. But it was interesting because like Christy Phillips was like, it was the best. We did everything. We went everywhere at the best time. And Dawes was like, New York City is too much. It was not for me, but Broadway was very nice. I totally forgot about the music videos she was in.
Oh, I can't believe it. That seems like that would be front of mind for you.
Oh my God. No, I remember the Missy Elliott one because that's the Stick It song. But I forgot
that was the video with like the Stick It people were also in it, right?
Yes. I forgot about the Prince song, the Betcha by Golly Wow. Where can you describe what she does in this?
So, like, she's playing the recorder, and like Prince sparkles are coming out of it because of Prince, and that's kind of what she's doing at the beginning about amongst the numbered people. There are people who have numbers on their shirts, and she's like putting them to sleep with her recorder playing. But then later she wakes them up through the power of like an aerial to cartwheel. That's basically that's my impression of what happens in this Prince video, which I do not understand what's going on, but I do like that Dominique Dawes is in there playing the recorder with Prince sparkles coming out of it.
I just remember this video starts with a pager, and I was like, oh my God, that's how old it is. There's a pager in this video.
Well, that wouldn't be your memory of it. Your memory of it would be like, this is topical.
Yeah, I feel like watching her do this, I was like, oh, she's like Pan, but it's a recorder, not a flute. And but she's like making people sexy dance in outfits with numbers with her not flute, a recorder. That's how I interpreted it. Yes. Oh, Prince. Also, okay, so the Missy Elliott video. We run this. Missy Elliott video, the iconic.
Yeah.
Missy Elliott is doing a very fun gymnastics routine with excellent choreography on a
steel girder.
Yeah, a steel girder, under building under construction.
We're building a skyscraper, and she's doing some like watch this to make some new beam choreography, because I would like this as beam choreography. But it's fascinating if you try to like psychoanalyze what's happening in this video, because Dawes is doing the gymnastics. Obviously, Missy Elliott's not doing the split leap, but also Dawes is standing there coaching her. So Dawes is two people. She's standing there coaching herself.
Yes,
is what I take from this.
Basically, yes. I enjoy it very much because I remember being very surprised that Dominique Dawes was in this, and I was like, Dominique Dawes is an icon. Of course, she's in this. I love it.
Club Gym Nerd, you get discounts and first dibs on live show tickets, an extra whole podcast every week, athlete dossiers for major competitions, code guides, options to commission your own segments. It also makes a great gift. Check it out at gymcastic.com at the Join the Club tab.
Whose video? Because I feel like, Simone's been in videos, but they're kind of, I mean, they're just like, I feel like it was like what cute boy asked her to be in a video, so she's in their video at the time. But whose video would you like to see, or an iconic lineup would you like to see in a music video, and who should it be? Like, should there be like a Betty Aquino and Trinity Thomas and Simone and Dominique Dawes in a video?
Yeah. I mean, I want to see a video, like someone writing a really spiteful song with everyone who was like close to making an Olympic team and didn't. Like, we're inviting Atler and Christy Phillips in there, and they're just like full of spite. That's what I want. And
what roles would the icons?
They're playing the spite muses, and they're playing the recorder. They come out, they emerge from a sea of spite, and they're playing the recorder, and like they're making people, like bad people, drop down dead with their recorder playing. That's what I want.
Okay, all right, but who should the artist be?
Like, I know any artists.
I know. Spencer said on Behind the Scenes on Friday, he was like, yeah, I'm listening to Scottish and Celtic Irish like folk songs. That's what I'm listening to right now.
That's correct.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, I didn't expect to hear that. But yeah. And I asked him to send me a song, and he hasn't still. Anyway, It's fine. I want to talk about another fluff piece that
I noticed you didn't answer the question.
So I think my video would kind of be like a This Is America, like Donald Glover, Childish Gambino version, like that style. But like the rise of like women and Black women through history, and you could go back to like Egypt and Ethiopia. Whoa. The original, and then
it's a long
the goddesses, like it's a full, and like it goes through history and like all the changes and the women they've forgotten about, and they all play these characters, And like it ends with, with obviously Kamala Harris being president. And that's how they all reveal who they're supporting for president. And that video should be out then right before November 5th. So that, remember to register to vote. So now, I've got to pitch this real quick.
You've got work to do. You've got to fast.
This is the best get out the vote idea I've ever had. Okay. I want to talk about this 1994 fluff piece where
is this the one that gets real about her family?
The real about her family.
Or like, I mean, and by real, I mean in quotes, because this is like a gymnastics fluff piece, so I assume everything is lies.
Yes. But it's interesting because like she talked about how well, they do a piece on her whole family. So she talks about like how her gymnastics have been tough on her family, and it's presented in a way where it's like, but her family is also having a really tough time. Her parents have separated, but they live one block apart from each other. And they don't name who's at fault for anything, but there's been accusations of domestic abuse and alcoholism, and there's restraining order. It doesn't say who against who, but they then talk about how her brother has autism, and how she gets to visit him on weekends. And then they show him on trampoline, just killing it on the backyard trampoline too, like very skilled. They talk about how the family is broken apart. They're upset. Her mom is crying, talking about this. And then the interviewer asks Dominique Dawes, like, so what have you learned from this? And this is what Dominique Dawes answers.
If there's one thing that you've learned from all this, what have you learned? Gymnastics. From gymnastics, difficulties at home. What have you learned?
I guess. Probably just to love everyone.
I was like, that was such a like beautiful thing to say. Just love everyone. Like, I was like blown away by that. I was so impressed by her coming up with that. And, she's crying while she's saying this and doing this interview. And I was just like, wow. And it reminded me how we talk about, we'll be covering a giant meet like the Olympics or World Championships or whatever, an Olympic trials. And people will be like, oh, this person is a head case. They can't hit. They blah, blah, blah. Oh, it's always the same thing. And this reminded me of what we talk about all the time is when we're like, gymnasts are people with real lives and they have shit going on. Like it's not necessarily their gymnastics that is the problem. It is there can be things in their life happening that they don't want to talk about, that they don't want to be public, and it's like, it made me also think, so the one thing was like, don't judge people by, it's just their gymnastics. Maybe there's something going on you don't know about and they don't want to share. But the other thing was, it made me think about how this was covered. And, there are similar things happening in elite gymnast lives, and none of it is covered like this. And I wondered what you thought would be, how this would be approached now.
Oh, it would be so packaged. What's interesting about watching this is just how messy this fluff piece is, in that there's not really a theme. There's not really an idea. It's just like, this is what's going on. And here are some interviews and various things that are happening, which would not be the way it is now. It would have to be packaged as a narrative. And unfortunately, it would probably have to be packaged as a positive. Like there would be, because otherwise it's not going to get shared. Because people don't want to share negative things. So it's like, what's going to get shared? And it's like, it would be the uplifting triumph after all of this. Rather than just like, here's what's happening.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the thing that I have noticed, the way that things are covered now, there is more agency for the athlete, which is one of the things that makes me so happy, because one of the reasons we started the podcast is like, they
got to decide whether their parents got shown on TV, etc. Yeah.
Yeah. Like the rights holders will actually interview the gymnast and say like, do you want us to talk about this? Who do you want us to show? Is there anybody you don't want us to show? This is a story we'd like to cover. Is that okay with you? Is that right? Do you not want us to talk about that? Like, that's a huge difference. Like, I doubt that in this era, someone asked Dominique Dawes, like, are you okay with talking about this? And she actually felt safe to say no.
I'm sure that didn't happen.
Right. And like, you know, and maybe she would have been fine with it. But like the difference is the agency and the ability to say no. And that the rights holders actually listening to that and caring about what the athletes want. And that I think that's such a huge progressive shift that we've had in the way gymnastics is covered. And it makes me so happy to know that difference is happening now. And it's just so great. I didn't realize also that she was on the national team for 10 years and they were non-consecutive years. So it was like 12 years, like 88 to 2000 of being and competing in elite. I was like, damn. What do you remember about the 1992 Olympics?
Yeah, 92 Olympics was that Dominique Dawes was the like exciting member of the team. Like we hadn't really seen her before, even though she wasn't like first year senior in 1992, but this was her first big thing, and she was doing the back-to-back tumbling on floor. Jessica, the back-to-back tumbling.
The
Magical.
back-to-back tumbling. I feel like the Soviets were the ones that did it first, or I remember like a leotard.
Yeah, this was a thing well before, but it was like, oh, she's bringing it back.
But I was like, oh, here we are. Like now it's happening here. Like if someone's doing anything the Soviets did, like they're the best gymnast ever. So she did 2 whips. I remember the era of whips. Oh, bring the whips back. I just love a 2 whip back. But she did the 2 whips, back handspring to double full, punch front step out through to sometimes a double back. Sometimes instead of the double back, she would do 3 back handsprings to 2.5 punch front, which a 2.5 punch front, which was also super exciting back then. I mean, it's still exciting, but more common.
Do some whips into it.
Oh,
whip 2.5 punch front. Jessica's gonna love you to
so
tears.
Good. Once, do you know that one time she got a 10 on floor in an elite gymnastics meet?
Well, look at you.
Oh, I know. I'm talking about a score. It was a Japan versus USA domestic meet, but still, there was like a standing ovation. She got a 10. I was like, oh, finally.
Bring back the dual elite meets, by the way.
Those. Yes.
You can score crazy and no one will care that much because it's just
a
random
fun invitational. No. We need a Swiss money meet. That's what we actually with the band in the corner and the mixed pairs. They don't have that anymore. Yeah, there's a lot of things we need. Beam. Her beam skills. In my mind, she did 7 layouts in a row. That's what I remember.
I know, me too. It's like she did 4 layout step outs, right? It was back handspring, 3 layout step outs, but
3 layout step outs, and it was a 2-foot back handspring.
Yeah,
which
you can fit them on the beam. You can do it. College with your back handspring layout step out, back handspring. We're moving on.
This is why I'm always like, when people are so like the youths, they're so excited about a 3 series on beam, and I'm like, oh my god, you're literally your grandma did a 3 series on beam. Like this, it's great you're bringing it back, but this is not new. This is just like up to level, elite level gymnastics. Okay.
But it is very exciting. Was it Lysenko at the 92 Olympics that when she did back handspring 3 layouts and her last layout was like her back foot is not even on this beam? Yeah.
Yes. I love those. She also did 2 back handsprings to full in. And
in 92, everyone. Closed code. 10-0 system.
But she
going
was like,
back and watching the 92 beam. It's still the best one. Because so this is what happened. Because I watched Dawes on beam in team optionals. And so she's doing her 3 layout step outs. She has her punch front. She has her dismount. So she had, wobble on the series, wobble on the front tuck, hop on the dismount, but got a 9.637 score. And I was like, that seems low for 92 because we were still giving out the pinatas and pineapples for doing, whatever. You could still get a 10.
Pinatas and pineapples.
We were giving out prizes for all kinds of things. You could get 9 9s. So then I was like, well, obviously, what I have to spend my day doing is watching the entire rotation for all of the top teams on beam in team optionals in 1992. And the first impression was 1992 is the beam Olympics. It was just the best one, and that's all there is to it.
That's true.
But then going back and watching like Chuso have the worst, in quotes, Soviet beam routine, and it's perfect, and she scored a 9.8, and I'm like, oh, okay, 9.637 is fine for this routine. For a second, I was like, Dominique Dawes was hosed, and then I was like, oh, no, this is just the standard.
I do remember also her bars doing that, like, backswing 1.5 pirouette.
Yes.
And then it's so nice. And like now you can't do it because unless you do the whole pirouette and handstand, but it's so cool. And it's like such a nice way to like to swing and go into something and come out of it. And it's like artistic in a way that like constantly having a upright horizontal or vertical angle is not exciting. I love a horizontal pirouette too. Don't get me started on those. Like that's another thing we need to bring back because those are really cool too. But where they just like let go of the bar, grab it again. Oh my God, I love that. But yeah, it's just so pretty. And I'm like, God, can't we have some leeway? If you're doing a 1.5 pirouette, can't you have a little leeway to go past vertical without a deduction? Like, why can't we have nice things?
If you're maintaining the rhythm of the routine, that should be the focus.
Should. Right? But does anyone risk it? No. I know. This is why, I mean, Dawes.
Immediately.
The Dawes era. And also her giant Hindorf.
Yes.
And the Hindorf is so fluid. It's so perfect. It doesn't break rhythm at all. It's just like, oh, this is what, when you swing, this is what perfectly what happens out of a free hip. Like, it's just so
Doesn't everyone just have this height out of their free hip? Come on.
Yeah. And like the way she's catching it, like fully, like she's not catching it, straddled with her hands forward. She's catching it all the way extended, swinging perfectly into the next skill. It's just textbook Hindorf. If anyone ever deducted her for that Hindorf, I would like to speak with you. It's perfect.
And this is also part of the evolution of her gymnastics that we were talking about, because 1992 Olympics, she was like, oh, we're so excited about her beam. We're so excited about her floor. And by 2000, it was like, she is a bars gymnast.
Yes.
She is a bars specialist, basically, on this Olympic team. But the bars was always there. It just wasn't the one that got the focus, I think, early on.
Yeah. Okay, 93 and 94 worlds. Ugh.
That damn Yurchenko 1.5. Yeah, I think the thing about 92 also that we should mention is that her ankles were fully mummified at that Olympics. And we heard a lot about the tendonitis. And I feel like then going to 1993 Worlds, even though vault, it was like watching what she would have done at the 1992 Olympics if she had been fully healthy. Because the routines were basically the same. She kept the same floor choreography. But it was like, oh, this is what we would have seen at the 1992 Olympics if she had been able to do everything she could have done. But then also vault happened. So if you're not, intimately familiar, 1993 Worlds, Dawes could have beat Shannon for gold in the all around. It would have been close. It would have been, close. But based on her first vault score, which she hit, she could have, but fell on her second vault. 1994 Worlds also could have medaled. Definitely would have medaled. Maybe not won, but would have medaled. Fell on her vault. It was like she could have been Shannon because she had the same ability level. But I think still the 1993 and 1994 Worlds made it clear she was as good as Shannon.
I think the thing about this, that going back and listening to the commentary, was she decided to do the 1.5 because she felt like she needed the 10.0 vault difficulty. And she was like, yeah, I'm going to go for this, because she understood that pusillanimouses will never be heroes. And she needed to go for it. And even though she was devastated when she fell both times, she still was like, yeah, if I have a shot, I have to do the most. So I want to win. I'm not going for third place, fourth place. This ain't no city championships, as Tasha Schweikert's mom would say. So I do appreciate that about her. I also appreciate, it's interesting going back and listening to what she says now about her experience in gymnastics, but I also appreciated that she was just like immediately tears when she didn't make it. You're like, yeah, she's super upset. She went for it. She fell. Of course, it's fine. Like, get all your emotions out. It's totally okay. You're amazing. You can do your Yurchenko 1.5. That's insane. But yeah, it was always, I remember early on, it was like, she was always the one that could have been Shannon and then wasn't. It was like one thing happened.
There was always something in her early career.
But she was still so good that I was like, yeah, she's absolutely the one that deserves the spot on all the teams.
Right. Yeah, and then she missed 1985 Worlds with injury, but then going into 1996, it was like, yeah, Dawes. That was not one of the questions heading into the 1986 Olympic process. It was like, obviously, Dominique Dawes is on this team. But I do want to talk a lot about the 1996 Olympics because it was kind of a big deal, but also Dawes's performance at the 96 Olympics, because she doesn't get the notoriety of Shannon, star, Moceanu, young upstart, floor routine like a 5-year-old that everyone likes for some reason, even though she's pretending to be 5 years old. Carrie Strug with the vault, And I, love watching Dominique Moceanu. It just, I have some issues with the way she was talked about and things that,
But we're talking about the floor choreography where she, throws herself on the ground and pretends to have a tantrum. Specifically,
we're upset about the Karolyi parts of Dominique Moceanu's career. But that was where all the focus was, and not as much on Dominique Dawes, who was the rock of the team.
Yep.
I think, first of all, the only gymnast on that team whose score counted in every phase of the team competition. Like, all 4 scores counted in compulsories, all 4 scores counted in team competition. Like, she hit and hit and hit and hit. And I think it was also a really big deal for her vaulted team optionals. So it turns out other things happened later in the rotation that were more significant. But the fact that she came back from 93 Worlds and 94 Worlds, where she had fallen on that Yurchenko 1.5 in the all-around, and it was a big deal, and she had missed out on medals and potentially winning both times, to then come back and hit, and doing 2 vaults, hitting her Yurchenko 1.5 in that team optionals competition for the highest vault score that the U.S. team got in that rotation, was a really, really big deal that we don't talk about because of Strug that happened in the vault. But it's a big deal for Dawes
to seal the team win, even though they'd already won. And
so it's not what you talk about vault at the 96 Olympics, but it was a big deal, I think, for her personally, and a really important routine, because she just, through compulsories, through team optionals, she just nailed it. But it wasn't a surprise because she was Dawes. It wasn't like, oh my God, look what she did. It was expected, but it was still incredibly impressive.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
And then she was, part of the all-around, she fell on floor in the all-around final, part of the post-team final hangover that all of the U.S. gymnasts had in that all-around final, but then came back on floor to win her individual Olympic medal, a bronze medal on floor at the 96 Olympics, in kind of the midpoint evolution of her gymnastics career in floor, because she wasn't no back-to-back passes anymore, but she was doing such a great double layout that I'm kind of I'm okay with it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I agree. How did you feel about the choreography?
That Dumpy Hills poop squat choreography that she had in 1986. That's how I feel about it.
One of my favorite routines of hers is when she was a baby, junior elite, and she might have just turned senior, and she did that. The music was terrible. Oh my God, don't get me started on the music. It was when the
organ horns.
Oregon horn,
like an organ, and not the state of Oregon, the instrument, an organ, organ horns, where it's just like a trumpet and an organ just going and that's her floor music.
Yes, it's horrible. What? It's
horrible.
It's not even a real organ. It's awful. Anyway, I can't stand the music, but her choreography was actually good, and you could see that she could actually perform. Because she was allowed to dance for more than 3 counts, because that era of gymnastics allowed for some dance. And then she did this really cool, it sounds funny, but it was really cool. She does this tripod on her head and has arm choreography while she's in the tripod. And I just love that. It was so creative.
That was part of her 92 floor routine, that tripod.
Yeah.
I think they could have done a little more with it, depending on the situation. But what happened was she had that 96 routine. Then she had to recover from it when she was doing like the pro gymnastics things in 97 and 98. So she did a like RESPECT Aretha Franklin routine. That's her best floor choreography.
Yes.
That's her best one of her career. And she kind of had nods to previous routines. Like she did the floor tripod in that routine, but like more fun version, like with actual like arm stuff and leg stuff. And I was like, okay, this is definitely your strongest floor routine of your career.
That was her pitching herself to Broadway. See,
Yeah.
I can dance. So wait until you hear me sing. Her singing was good too. I mean, I don't think it's like Broadway singer singing, but like for playing a cheerleader in Greece, I think her like I would not have known it was Dominique Dawes like playing that. I was impressed. So yeah, she's a team gold medalist. Is a big deal. Magnificent Seven changes American gymnastics forever.
She's like, don't need to do stupid college gymnastics anymore. Which,
so
you know, it was still part of the era when, like, if you made it at the Olympics and you were an elite, like, you're not going to do college gymnastics because we were pre the, like, 2000 UCLA Olympians.
What's really interesting about this, though,
except for Missy Marlowe, of course.
Yeah.
Always credit to Missy Marlowe.
Credit forever to Missy Marlowe. I didn't know that. So there's a very early interview where she talks about how she is going to, you know, she's going to go to the 92 Olympics. That's her goal. Then she's going to go to Stanford, or she's going to go to college. She didn't say Stanford at the time, but she was like, I'm going to go to college.
But there was a point where she was committed to Stanford.
Yeah.
Definitely.
But at that point, she didn't say Stanford. But anyway, she was going to I'm going to go to the 19 Olympics. That's my goal. I'm going to go to college. And then if I'm happy and healthy and I'm able to, I would like to go to the 96 Olympics. And then the more gymnastics and the more elite she did, the story changed to, I'm going to college. My gymnastics career is over. And it was so interesting that at the youngest point, she talked about doing both. I'm going to do college and then I'm going to keep up my gymnastics career. And then later it changed because very rare for that period of time. And I wondered what changed if she was just like, my body cannot do this. I don't know what I was thinking. But what's interesting is
the level of, you know, accomplishment. When you're little, you're like, we'll see what happens. And then you're going to 93 worlds and you're going to 94 worlds and you might win. And you're like, okay, well, this changes my, you know, goals and perspectives because I realize how good I am. Or
you also are like, I'm at the 96 Olympics now. I'm a, you know, Olympic champion.
I'm an Olympic gold. We're kind of a big deal. We're the Mag 7.
Yeah.
No more stupid college. Give me that money.
College.
Like all of them did.
Yes. But she did get into Stanford. I mean, she was accepted to Stanford, which is a huge deal because you have to actually be accepted into Stanford. And it's hard to get into there. She did give an interview later where she talked about how she started listening to herself and, you know, after 96, and she went to college in Maryland, and she was just like, how do I feel? What do I want? And she was like, oh, I want to go back to gymnastics. And then she went back to the gym and started, you know, working out on her own and getting back in shape on her own. And then went back to the 2000 Olympics. Oh, the 2000 Olympics.
What a time it was. What a ridiculous disaster of a U.S. selection, you know,
such a mess
coaching situation. But most of the 96ers
for everybody
to come back. Yeah.
But everybody that doesn't know the disaster, a quick recap of the disaster that was.
They put Bela Karolyi in charge. End of recap.
That's all you need to know. People were told mid-run for warm-up that they weren't on the team. Everything was a controversy and a mess. Adler didn't make it. There was one of the selection committee came forward and was like, Bela Karolyi's lying to everybody and telling them he has them on the team no matter what, and then they're not on the team. And yeah, it was just horrible. It was a huge mess. And then the meet itself was a mess because the vault was set wrong because, as Uncle Tim uncovered,
the 2000 Olympics went great for everyone.
Uncovered that the printout for the height of the vault was wrong. So no one actually did anything wrong. They were following the correct instructions. So, okay.
So yeah, the 2000 Olympics was an experience. Ends up, Dawes is a bronze team medalist from the 2000 Olympics 10 years afterward, because China was originally a medalist and then disqualified for age falsification. The U.S. is then 2000 Olympic bronze medalists. And most of as I was saying, most of the 96ers, a good majority of them tried to come back for 2000, but it was Dawes and Chow who made the team. And it was kind of the completion of Dawes's evolution from being like the trickster or maybe the one who falls at 93 and 94 Worlds to being, she was not on the highest scoring team. So, my argument has always been Adler. But Dawes made that team for, I think, veteran presence, solidity. Bela felt like he knew her, could trust her. It would have been really, the interesting thing looking back on that is like, so Morgan White was originally on the team as well and then got injured and was replaced by Tasha Schweikert. If you had Dawes and Morgan White on the team, there's a real vault hole on that team. And I'm like, where was Vanessa Adler? But, it's a different, she hit.
Because Morgan White broke her something and then had to leave Sydney. And was one of the few times a alternate actually replaced a gymnast on the team. What did you think of what Dawes looked like as a gymnast compared to 92 and like her gymnastics, her choreography compared to how she competed in 2000 when she said she was listening to herself and doing it for herself and she really trained by herself to get ready for that?
It's watching an adult do gymnastics who's like in charge of themselves and making their own decisions. And that's always more gratifying to me, at least. Yes. It's always more fun to watch when someone's like, this is me. I'm going to do me as a gymnast. And that's what it felt like, especially with Dawes at trials, where it was like, she's ready for this. She's not. And also just being ready for it and not just like, I might try to come back. We'll see. It was like, oh, you're ready to make this team. You're here to make a team.
Yeah. And when people are like, oh my God, she has so little time to come back. And I was like, she's been working out by herself, getting ready for this. She didn't just show up with 5 minutes to compete. Speaking of how different and how herself Dawes looked in 2000, do you remember what Betty Aquino said in the...
in Simone documentary when she was talking about the 92 team and how the black gymnasts had to kind of try to look like the top Soviet white gymnasts, and what a far cry that is. Like, I loved, as we talked about, I loved going back and watching the 1992 Olympics and watching beam. The thing that stands out is like everyone is exactly the same, and then bogey's tall. It's like everyone has the exact same body type, and it's not that like they're doing the same skills. There's great variety, and that's really exciting. But it's just like everyone is trying to look exactly the same. And it's nice to see then Dawes in 2000 where it's like she's not trying to look like the other gymnasts.
Yep. So I want to talk a little bit about Dawes's activism and sort of the evolution of her perspective on gymnastics over the years. It's really interesting because you see that she lived with her coach for years and years and years. And there's so many fluff pieces and at meets where Kelly Hill is talking about how much she loves Dawes and how she's so glad that she sees her as someone she can rely on. And like so many times when Dawes, is like upset and crying in a meet and Kelly Hill is being encouraging and hugging her, be like, you went for it. You did it. I'm so proud of you. Believe in yourself. But then something happened after, and Dawes talks about this being a part of her having her own children and part of her marriage and her relationship, seeing things differently, and how her husband really pointed out to her when she would talk about, her experiences in gymnastics, how those things were not normal. And she started to really think like, oh, would I want someone to treat my kids like this? And she has started speaking out about how much abuse and how much change there needs to be in the sport. And she did an interview with the Montgomery County media where and I love this interview because we've also been in this situation where people have kids. So, and they bring their kids to the interview. So the kids are part of the interview. You hear baby things happen in the background. So in this interview, she praised Mochiano for speaking out, was her teammate in 96. And she was like, a lot of people that just thought Mochiano was just bitter because her career didn't go the way she wanted. And they didn't listen to her, but she spoke out anyway. And she was proven to be totally right. And she said that her own parents So Dominique Dawes' parents tried to open her eyes to the realities of gymnastics, but she said, I was so driven, and she was like, I knew my parents weren't going to be able to afford to send me to college. And so even though she said, they were middle class, her dad was an entrepreneur, owned his own business.
Stanford's kind of pricey.
Yeah, Stanford's expensive. But she was like, I was so driven. That was really important to me. And I wanted to be able to go to college. And so I wanted to stay in gymnastics. Like, I had no idea that was a motivation for her, to be able to pay for college gymnastics. But man, it is a motivation for a lot of parents. But she said it's so interesting to hear her say that her parents were kind of against her gymnastics, but it was her driving this, because there's so many times you hear the opposite story, that it was, the parents pushing, the coaches pushing, and not her. But she also said she doesn't regret doing gymnastics because it put her where she is now. And she can now put a purpose to the pain. She has put purpose to what she went through. And this reminded me of something we were talking about with the GOAT tour, because remember when we did our behind the scenes all about the GOAT tour, and I talked about.
I wasn't here.
Oh, that's right. Sorry, I did it without you. So that's right. You're busy that week. But I did we did a behind the scenes about the rehearsals and all the things on the GOAT tour, and it was interesting because I had the total opposite reaction of someone else. There's a portion of the GOAT tour where the gymnasts all watch videos of themselves as little gymnasts. It's made me cry every time. I saw it like 4 times. Every time it made me cry, and I felt better because Joss was like, yeah, it makes us cry when we watch it. But it's interesting because it's like a love letter to gymnastics. And at the end they say, the message of this act is gymnastics, you were good to me. And there's someone who wrote in who was like, I hated this. It made me so mad. This is not acknowledging the full experience of gymnastics. What about all these people that have spoken out? And like the last GOAT tour was very much about all of that anxiety and abuse, and it was all like discussed, not the abuse, but it was all part of the show and part of the acts in an age appropriate way. This one, it's much more positive. And my reaction to it was like, oh, this is a reflection of where Simone is now and where a lot of the gymnasts on the tour are now. Like they have gotten through and overcome, and they are able to like enjoy gymnastics from a different place now. But we had someone write in who saw it, who it just infuriated them because they're like, how can you say this when all these things have happened? How can you say gymnastics was good to you because it wasn't? And I think part of hearing Dominique Dawes talk about this made me think about the difference between that you can, like when people complain about me, to me, like I would never put my kids in gymnastics. It's so abusive. You should never do it. And I'm like, it's not the sport. Because the same thing happens in football and soccer and basketball and any sport you can think of. There are bad people everywhere who do things for the wrong reasons. It's not the sport. And I interpreted this the same way Dawes did. She's like, I love gymnastics and it got me where I am today. It's not necessarily the sport. She's opened her own gym because she loves the sport. It's the way that it is coached, the way it's done. There are a couple other talking about Dawes' activism. There's a couple other quotes from this interview. Will you read those?
Sure. She said, while I might have reached the pinnacle in the sport, it was a very harmful environment, physically, verbally, emotionally, and it's not worth the sacrifice. It's not worth the cost. They rewarded coaches for abusive behavior, for physical, verbal, and emotional abusive behavior. That behavior resulted in us winning a gold in 1986 and making history. However, it's not worth the cost. I opened up to one of my teammates there and shared with her what I was going through, and I remember regretting it because of the ramifications. Let's just say that I was forced to endure as a very young person, and I remember not wanting to speak up to my parents at all.
And while she was there, she's talking about like being at Hills and being a child, basically training. Yeah, it's very interesting listening to her talk about things the way she reflects on them now, because you would have never have thought this for so many years. Like when they finally got their bronze medal in 2010? Yeah. From Sydney. She talked about how the Kelly Hill was the one that, should have this medal. And it's interesting how perspectives can change over time. One of the things that's really impressed me about Dawes over the years, and I'm not sure how to put this except for she's been really good about knowing her worth and like not being used by USA Gymnastics in a lot of ways. And like during the like explicit exploitation era, let me say, of USA Gymnastics.
What era? How are you defining that era? Temporally?
Explicit exploitation. I'm defining as if you don't do the media appearances and like sign your tour contract before the Olympic trials, there will be ramifications, or everyone was afraid of ramifications. And also USA Gymnastics controlled everyone's media appearances. Those are the explicit exploitation era. So I think that it's interesting the things that she did because she would participate in some USA Gymnastics organized things, but not without her own way to benefit from it, I think. And I don't mean that like as a whole that she wouldn't do things to promote the sport. Like,
you don't mean it cynically, that she was being cynical about it.
Yeah, exactly. I don't mean she's like, I don't get out of bed for less than $10,000 kind of a thing. Also, good for you if you don't, but good for you.
Also, don't get out of bed for less than $10,000.
No, that's the minimum. But I mean, like, you know, she supported women's sports and she did things. Like, she was the president of the Women's Sports Foundation. And she, you know, there are important things she did for women's sports in general, but like big picture, I feel like she knew her value and she protected herself and probably has had a great agent or manager. But like, I think of the time that she showed up for the 1996 Olympic team gold reunion. And we'll show this picture if you're a visual listener.
With her ad shirt?
Her Go-Go Squeeze ad on her shirt.
She was ahead of the time.
She was ahead of the influencer era. She was like, oh, everyone is like in their like, you know, nice outfits. And she's like, welcome to my sponsor right here on my shirt. Just like a t-shirt with a sponsor on it, you know, like that's what I mean. Like at that kind of thing, I'm impressed by that. Like I would probably be annoyed if I was the interviewer being like, seriously, but also good for you. Yeah. And then I think the other thing I want to talk about Dawes is like, her being so important for not letting USA Gymnastics control her media appearances. I'm not saying she never worked with them, maybe if it worked, but like she was in charge of herself, is she gave us the greatest meme of all time. Can you describe the creepiest moment of the games?
Oh, Spencer. The Steve Penny hiding in the bushes watching Dominique Dawes do an interview?
Yes.
The scariest image of all time. Where this is London Olympics. Dominique Dawes is giving an interview, and Steve Penny is literally hiding in the bushes behind her, watching, which just tells you everything. It tells you everything you need to know.
Like this is USA Gymnastics in that era to a T. Like their president trying to control everything anyone say, anything anyone do. I want to know what's happening. Like has to know. I love that it's, you know, Dawes doing her thing. And she's like, I could care less about that dude. Like I'm in charge of me. We have to talk about some of the commercials she did over the year. I'm very upset that there was a Tide, you know, the Tide commercial that like, where Simone, it's like one of Simone's very first commercials when it's like it's a laundry cleaner and she's like so strong. She's like she's at school and she like closes her locker and she knocks all the lockers down. Like it's just about her being super strong.
Yeah.
And apparently there's a version of this that has Nadia and Dominique Dawes and Simone in it.
Wow.
But I have not. It seems to be taken down. Like every link of it is gone. And I'm like, oh, maybe that's because someone in here was really smart and was like, oh, you didn't pay us enough to use us in perpetuity. Like, so Simone, you paid Simone enough maybe to use it in perpetuity, but not us. Because the Simone version's up, but not the one with Nadia and Dawes. But let's talk about the Kodak commercial, which was one of my favorite commercials of all time. Do you remember this one?
No, I don't.
Okay. This is the commercial where the judges, who all have Soviet accents, obviously Russian accents, Dawes like leaves a disposable camera by her bag leaves the room for a second. The judges get excited about it and steal her camera and all tumble and do gymnastics and take pictures of each other. And then like, oh no, she's coming back. And they all run back to their seats. I love this. It's my favorite commercial. Because honestly, all the judges, this is what they do when they get to go on the floor to take their like gymnastics. They all take like a big picture before the meets and they all jump on things and they try because they love gymnastics and they were mostly all gymnasts. Like that's exactly what they would do. Stealing cameras. Now I can't speak to that, but it's such a fun, lighthearted commercial. I really enjoy it. We haven't talked about the most important part of Dominique Dawes' career.
We haven't.
Which is obviously the fashion.
Was there remarkable fashion in Dominique Dawes' career?
There was one leotard.
Okay.
This was before Jordan Childs wore her Beyonce tribute leotard, before Beyonce wore her geometric clown costume with the dog collar that Jordan Childs wore her tribute Leo for. There was Dominique Dawes in her 1994 fancy meme trapped in golf pants leotard.
A fancy meme?
A fancy mime. This is what I try to read in my notes instead of just talking. Well, how would you describe this? Leo was high fashion at the time. High fashion. How would you describe this Leo?
Court jester.
Court jester.
Yeah, because we've got chessboard. We've got all the good 90s colors, all in the one leotard. It's remarkable. It's hideous, and it's excellent.
Yes, it is really like, it's all squares of different sizes placed at random. And it also, though, this is the important thing about this leotard, it works in the Maryland flag checkerboard, which is always my favorite thing about the Maryland flag, is it looks like a race. It has like a portion, looks like the race flag on at a race with like a car race. And this was so in, like, this is the era of jackets and sweaters that had just like, they just screamed geometry and
like, very geometric.
Yes. Oprah or like a sitcom TV dad would have worn this pattern in a sweater. Yeah.
We're trying to avoid naming the specific sitcom dad because it's gone bad. But
it's gone very bad. Like many things from this era. But the leotard stands strong. And then, remember when she did the photo shoot? There's a gymnastics book where it's just like big, like a coffee table size pictures of gymnasts doing, like I think Shannon Miller's on a white horse with a long, flowing something. And Dominique Dawes is just wearing a gold lame bodysuit doing a straddle jump. And I was like, this, yes to all of it. It just screams, I believe in myself, confidence, break the beam, Simone. That's what it is. I love it. All right. Is there anything else that you want to say about Dominique Dawes?
Yeah, the favorite floor was the 97 Pro Tour. I mean, my favorite event to watch Dawes on was always beam, even though it wasn't always the highest score. It would be bars or floor usually. But I mean, back handspring 3 layouts. And then even just like through her career when that went away, just the aggressive approach, quick. I like quick, quick, aggressive, difficult acrobatics on beam without all this faffing about. So I think like early Dawes beam is probably my favorite.
The thing I always appreciated about Dawes is the way she always kept her ankles perfectly glued together, because it showed and proved how like whenever I saw her legs together, because she had legs that like didn't touch in the middle, and so but the way that she did her gymnastics showed that you cannot deduct someone for their body type. You can only deduct for the things that they are able to do. So her legs didn't actually touch because her bones weren't shaped that way, but her feet were always together, so you knew her form was perfect. Even if when she's standing, they would show those long, long shots down the beam, and she's standing with her legs together, getting ready to tumble. And you can see like her legs, are bowed, but that's okay because that was her body.
I can't put my knees together. And I can't put my knees together and my feet together at the same time. It's one or the other.
Yeah.
So.
And I was just like, yeah, this is the thing. Like, do you see how good her form is, though? It's not her form, it's her body type. And like, I feel like that has progressed in such a positive way. And I feel like her glued together feet, like her dismount on bars, so good. Glued together feet. I just don't think we talk enough about how good her form was and how excellent it was and easy for her. And also how this is the other thing. She basically did not have to upgrade her gymnastics really from the time she first became a senior elite to her final third Olympic Games over 10 years because she was that good.
And you could do difficulty in 1992.
I mean, she was doing all the things.
She was doing all the difficulty in 1992.
I just appreciate her for that. Okay, so that, if you have thoughts on the episode, if there's more you want, if you're like, my God, how could you have not talked about, this one thing that's important to you over Dawes's, career that we didn't mention today, feel free to write in at gymcastic@gmail.com or go to the forum. And you can join us on Behind the Scenes and we'll discuss all the letters, answer all of your questions, discuss your feelings about this. Thank you so much to Aaron for commissioning this. And Andrea, we are wishing the best and enjoy the wonderful fall weather in Minnesota. I hope you're not going to be baking like we're going to be here. There's supposed to be a heat wave. Oh, I'm so jealous of the Minnesotans. Anywho, enjoy. Thank you so much. We'll see you guys for Behind the Scenes to discuss all of your thoughts, all your feelings, talk about things on Friday at noon Pacific. We do that every Friday at noon Pacific. And until then, remember to take off on gay, split on rights, and we'll see you on Friday. Thanks for listening.